I started architecture without really loving architecture. I'm missing a lot of architects fighting again to make culture as relevant as it was before. Buildings should be more than that. They shouldn't just be these boxes that people disappear in. We're more divided than ever also as societies, as humans, as communities, as colleagues, and we need to be more united. What can a project do for the community? Because the community deserves best. Can we make buildings that make people feel good? It was spirituality and science. We had 4 albums out, we had videos in MTV. We love design, of course, but how can architecture be this tool for things that we're missing in society? I really understood the power of architecture and the beauty of responsible architecture compared to shitty architecture. I really believe in the power to real collaborations. If you have the capacity to be curious, but also with the wisdom of growing older, I think that's a beautiful combination. It has to be exciting, has to be thrilling, has to be... I love a little bit of misbehaved. Wow, finally somebody's talking my language. Nobody told us how much we can imagine. To me, it was like, it's a challenge, okay. Now, I think that we're in a moment that it's very important to not give away our power to imagine.
Michel, very nice seeing you. It's good to see you again here in Miami. Welcome to this exhibition.
Thank you.
I curated this show. It's called Out of ConText. It presents projects by architects coming from 7 different countries. And the projects are also done in 7 different countries. And there is no unifying theme other than every architect is presenting the process, and what makes, where this project started, what inspired them. And this is the only thing that really unites these projects. Otherwise, they are all very different. They have, different schemes, different functions, different scales, different materials. Everything is very different, but what is similar is my focus on rationalizing these projects. And we put them together so they are wonderfully misaligned. Okay. They are totally out of context. They are also out of context with the current moment in architecture today. Not at WAF, but in most other places, people no longer talk about buildings. Buildings is something people say, architects say is, it's not really architecture. Yeah. Ideas are, issues are, sustainability is more architecture than buildings. So yeah. I want to go back to buildings. I want to go back to architecture,
which is super important.
How you start the project, where do you get inspirations, and so welcome to this exhibition, this forum. So this exhibition is really the beginning of a conversation. It's not only about presenting what was done in the past, but it's also about speaking to new, other designers and architects,
which is needed,
across, and who bring their own ideas. So if you could introduce yourself, what do you do? What do you bring to WAF? Are you presenting here? If you could say a few words about that.
My name is Michel Rojkind. It's a pleasure to reconnect again, my friend. And I'm an architect based in Mexico City. I've been working for a long time now, 20-something years. Happy to have a lot of work at the moment. I'm here at the WAF as a jury for the Super Jury for the Future Project Awards. And I mean, great that we're doing this interview, because now I think that we're in a moment that it's very important to not give away our power to imagine. I think that we forgot how to imagine. In the craziness of this world, in the speed of all this information, the opportunity to really, really create and to imagine new scenarios, I'm missing that. I'm missing a lot of architects fighting again to make culture as relevant as it was before, but fighting as a group of people, not individual and everybody doing their own projects, because I think that we're more divided than ever also as societies, as humans, as communities, as colleagues, and we need to be more united. If it doesn't come from that opportunity to imagine new scenarios, it's not gonna happen. So we need to push for that. So most of the things that we do in our office is not only think of the projects in a way to respond to a client, but what can a project do for the community? So it's not just a question of doing a checklist of the project and yes, we did this. It's like, okay, you're the client, this is a project, this is the community, this is the labor work, this is the craft. How do we bring everything together with that opportunity to imagine new scenarios and imagine new ways of making sure that there's generosity as an outcome. So not only we design the building, but we're being very generous in the way we're delivering something to the community, because the community deserves best. If every architect would think of ways that their project would not only give to the client, but would also give to their community, we would have much better cities, no, for sure, no?
I wonder, maybe you can talk a little bit more about this engagement with the community. Who inspired you to go into that direction? Maybe you came across some interesting ideas from, not necessarily from buildings, but from the processes, from from architects who worked in the past, or maybe in our own times.
I think
Where do these ideas come from?
I think I'm lucky that I come from a house where my father was a National Science Prize. He was a liver researcher, doctor. He passed away already, but he was like very, very heavily involved in discovering something for the liver. And my mother, who went to India to look for her guru. So it was spirituality and science. So connecting science and spirituality has always been something very interesting for me. So when I was studying architecture, it was, can we help bridge with architecture, science, and spirituality? Can we make buildings that make people feel good within the building? Not only the technical and science part of architecture and structure and weight and of course, which we'll get into that, but I hate talking about sustainability because I think there is nothing to sustain anymore. I think we need to talk about reciprocity and having a mindset of reciprocity and regeneration. But so I think that I'm more interested in humanists. I'm more interested in people that have seen society, psychology, sociology, how we've been evolving or not evolving as humans. Because I think as architecture, it's our responsibility to understand that architecture can be a tool for social change, not only to do a project for one client and have a great standalone thing, but architecture. I'll put an example, for instance. In Mexico, we were designing this store for a client that is like it's a grocery store, but we wanted him to be the bridge to connect with the farmers in Toluca in Mexico, so they can farm on the rooftop of this wow. place. So yes, we could design a space that's not, but we can also bridge something that was broken in Mexico, that you can kind of tie these things together. So we're always looking for, we love design, of course, but how can architecture be this tool for things that we're missing in society? So, which is not taught at school. In school, they teach you to be very technical and to understand how to fix something or to be of service for a community. Yeah, it's great. But being of service, really being of service, is to pay attention to everybody from the community, not only the client paying or not only a specific. It's like be of service and see how it can have more impact and more porosity towards a city and a planet that we, I mean, as designers, we are optimistic because we're thinking of designing better solutions. No, how can a building make a better school? How can a building make a better anything that we're working on? No, a better house, better something that is that can dignify our way of living. But thinking outside that building is, to me, what's interesting. And it doesn't matter, even if we're working government projects like the Philharmonica in Boca del Rio that we did in Mexico. So the Philharmonica, of course, we were working for the Philharmonica, but then we said, isn't it beautiful that the Philharmonica can open its doors to present other types of things? Yoga, book fairs, many different things that the orchestra now feels happy to open its doors in its Philharmonica, not only for music. So it's like making people understand that it's everybody's responsibility, not only the architects, not only the musicians, not only the builders. It's like we can work in ways that community make the best of everything that's going on. No?
You just mentioned, there was one force in your family representing science, the other spirituality. Why did you go into architecture? What sparked that interest?
I mean, I wasn't very sure at the beginning. I have to be very honest. I don't know if we talked about this. I used to be a drummer. So I was a drummer in a band for,
very well known and successful one.
we had 4 albums out. We had videos in MTV, and I loved graphic design back in the days. I wasn't sure about architecture. I loved design, and I was designing record covers for artists without being a graphic designer. So, and my brother, who was in real estate, he's like, no, you should study architecture because maybe then we can do something together. And I have to confess that I started architecture without really loving architecture, just like, okay, I'll go with the flow. And when I started touring with my band and going to different airports and different infrastructures and different parks and different, I started appreciating architecture because I was like, I was being aware of, oh, I'm in this place and this society responds differently because of the way the infrastructural grid of the city is, or the open spaces, and it started kind of sinking in, and I really understood the power of architecture and the beauty of responsible architecture compared to shitty architecture that is doesn't pay attention to the city, or standalone projects that could be beautiful but really don't signify anything to the community, no? So it started kind of sinking in, and the more I would travel touring with my band, the more I would come back and say, wow, I'm super happy being an architect, no?
And I understand that all of this happened before you went to school to study architecture? Or
No, at the same time.
At the same
I mean,
time.
when first semester of architecture, I was signed with Virgin Records. So it was interesting because I could have dropped out. I have a beautiful mother who, again, she's very spiritual. She said, oh, I believe you should stay doing both and then see until when you can. And I guess as a parent, if you throw that seed into your sons, to me it was like, it's a challenge, okay. So I tried to do it for as long as I could until I said, enough of the music industry. Now I want to work as an architect, no? And I think that also the beauty of coming from a place where, as a musician, you collaborate a lot. You want to play with somebody that's a good musician. When I started doing architecture back in those days, most architects didn't collaborate. They were very siloed, very independent. They were very jealous of people or sharing, no? Now it's beautiful to see younger generations. They're more about collaborations and they're more open, but before it was very rare. We couldn't do that. So I started to try to force friends to work in collaborations because I really believe in the power to real collaborations, where a real collaboration is being vulnerable enough and open, not to want to go in your direction, but open to new ideas and to learn from those new ideas. So that's what I mean about collaborations. And that's been my life's work. So yes, I have my office, but it's always Rojkind Arquitectos plus somebody that I'm working with because I like this opportunity to, let's try to see a problem with different perspectives, but come out with the best solution. And I don't care if it's your solution or my solution, but we can plan to see where we can lead this information, no?
I want to ask you perhaps a question which is not kind of expected. I want to know what kind of architecture do you enjoy most, and maybe you can tell me some examples of visits in certain buildings that became really memorable or striking, something that an emotional experience that you can never forget.
Well, it's been in different stages, no? Because I always say we're organic beings, and organic beings, we're always challenged and shift mindsets and challenge our own ways of thinking. And at some point I was more interested in like this heavy architecture, and then you transition to different things. I've always been a huge fan, I have to confess, of Herzog and Demeron, for instance, because coming from a school that you were always taught to, coming from Mexico, after Barragán, there was Legorreta. So all the schools when I was studying were like, you have to be like Legorreta, and they wanted to force Mexican architecture being about colors. And I said, well, Mexico is not only about colors, it's about so many other things. So I was always trying to break free from expectations or being pinned down in a box, no? So when Herzog and Demeron won the Pritzker Prize, and their whole statement was, we cannot do the same project everywhere because it's a different client, it's different geographies, it's different economies, it's different craft, so you cannot have the same results. I was like, wow, finally somebody's talking my language. And that's also been my life's work, like doing projects that are very different. I have to confess that I just came back from Japan,
Oh wow!
And,
When did you?
last
go there?
week, last
oh,
week.
last week. I was there in September.
And it's beautiful. But I was there with Ishigami,
Wow.
which I love Ishigami's work.
So
And
this was for a project? Or?
I went to do a talk. I
Okay.
gave a talk in Japan, and I met some friends, of course, Mark Daitam, and then Kengo Kuma was we also visited his office. But I went to see Ishigami's university, the structure with the perforations,
Yeah, yeah.
and I had a beautiful experience there. Almost the same when I visited the Teshima Art Museum by Nishizawa, no, for Rei Naito, and it's this poetic thing, and again, this power to imagine things that are not there. This capacity to think in such a way that it moves you, and it's not what you expect. It's not this well-behaved architecture that you're going to have a star put on your forehead. It's not it's the freedom to create something that's so beautiful and so poetic. And I remember that we were going there and it was cloudy, and I said, "Oh, I wish the sun was out." But when we got there, Ishigami was not there. He sent me with one of his people from the office. He said, "No, wait, you have to see it when it's cloudy because the light coming in diffuses, and then when the sun came out, you would see like this thing like fine tuning to see the edges of the square, and then diffusing again." And he would say, "Well, and if you come here when it's raining, you would see columns of water in this space."
Wow.
So I mean, it was
Very
something
magical.
it was something
And
very poetic.
I hope you also had the chance to see So Fujimoto's exhibition in
Yes.
Tokyo, which is absolutely fantastic
Amazing.
with 1,000 models.
It was very. I sent a photo from there to Fujimoto-san to thank him. I'm like, wow, this is great to see all your work, and even the puppets that he had for the kids, and also the playrooms. But again, it's when you're there, you understand that power to imagine that I'm talking about. Like, I think it's our responsibility as humans. We're in a moment where culture doesn't mean a lot anymore, where everything is so fast and everything is like the instant headline, that culture now became very simplified and very abstract and very superficial. So I really think that we need to fight as a society to bring back culture to the depth of what culture is. No, so when I say the power to imagine, I'm actually talking about that, not giving up this power to make our arts be strong enough to come back to a culture that is deep, that has meaning, that creates momentum for humanity to evolve. Otherwise, it's just again this 5-second social media feed. No,
I wonder if you have a kind of recipe for how to be an interesting architect.
just curiosity. I would say come back to the curiosity of. I didn't. When I was saying why I studied architecture, it's not about architecture. I was always very curious of how the world has changed, no, and I'm curious on why we have all these crazy leaders now. I mean, do we deserve it as a society? I don't think so, but they're there, and nobody's. We're overwhelmed with news, and nobody's doing anything because we're so overwhelmed that we think that things will change, and they won't change if we don't change. So this idea of remaining curious. I think that the perfect mix with age, now that we've been in this for such a long time, it's like if you have the capacity to be curious, but also with the wisdom of growing older, I think that's a beautiful combination, no? Curiosity and wisdom to be able to create, not as an individual, and again, I'm trying to find more voices to create a common thing amongst us, designers, creators, whatever, curators. How do we move into a direction that we know that there is a group fighting for culture, fighting to do something that is a collective and not something that I'm only concerned about my projects? No, I'm concerned about humanity, and I'm doing this thing because I think it adds a little bit to where we're moving as creative humans in this planet, no?
Where do you derive your inspirations from? How do you start a project? Do you begin just by going to the site, or do you have a lot of ideas in your head already,
No.
coming from previous projects?
I think that when I started doing architecture, I had all these preconceptions that I learned to give up on them because I found out that if I was not listening and I was only talking, I would not do the right work. So now it's more about listening, coming to the site, connecting to the people, looking at what their craft is, what are the materials that they're used to working with. And then with all this information, I can come back and start working on something. But it's more about listening. It's more about taking the time in this craziness of world that doesn't have time anymore to listen and to understand like what are the pros and cons, what are the good things, what does the community want, what does the client want, how can I be kind of this person stitching all these little things coming together to create something that really has a power to sink into the community and not only be the ego of the architect putting a stone somewhere, no? So I guess it's more about listening, no? And being interested in humanity again, not losing faith in humanity, but like still believing that we can change, no? In this.
But if you, to be honest, if you only listen, you're not really going to bring something entirely new. You will bring something again that's expected because this is what you were told. But I wonder, what do you bring
I don't know.
to each project? What are the happy incidents or coincidences? We talk about rationality, but we know that the best work is very often very irrational.
Yeah.
Some
I mean,
people collect different objects, and those objects make an effect on the forms of interiors or exteriors of their projects.
No, I mean,
Some people go back to their archives and they revive old projects and change the scale, and it becomes a new project. So I wonder if you can remember any of those happy coincidences.
When I say about listening, it's you listen, but then you come back, and I learned that when we come back and put our input, it's like, how do we see it with fresh eyes? How do we make this something that again has to be exciting, has to be thrilling, has to be I love a little bit of misbehaved, no? I love that our projects always have a little bit of like this kid with this like curiosity again. So one example would be when we did our first project in the U.S. that it was in Bentonville in Arkansas with Marlon Blackwell as a partner.
Oh, he's here.
I know.
I'll interview him later.
We'll ask him about this building that we did together because we did the Ledger. It's called the Ledger Building. And our client, when we arrived in Bentonville, he put us on bicycles. And we went and toured the city in a bicycle. And when we came back, the project is a office building, 200,000 square feet office building. And we said, why not ride your bicycle all the way up to the 6th floor of an office building? They're like, no, that's crazy. And we ended up designing a project that you ride your bicycle to get up to the 6th floor of the building. So that's, I mean, we paid attention to the community, we paid attention to the client, but we came back with things that we know we can, because I personally, and also Marlon and Haruka, and which was the third firm collaborating with us, we hate buildings that people come in at 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, disappear, come out at 2 o'clock, go again in, disappear, and then leave at 5 p.m. And buildings should be more than that. There shouldn't just be these boxes that people disappear in. So if you have these ramps that you can walk or bike, it's active all the time. And then also you're on the 6th floor, but you see people passing through your building. So it has this generosity of the street kind of climbing up the building, which makes it a different experience. So no, I mean, when I say listen, it's yes, we listen to all the things that are going on, but we come back and we put this in the way we process architecture, and the way we think that we want to push or test that power of imagination. How far can we take it? And we call this process from mild to wild. And we say, well, let's see which is the mildest version, and let's see which one is the wildest version. And let's see if somewhere in between. But we test all these different possibilities to think what can be done. Mm-hmm. And that's our job all the time.
And finally, I want to ask you, what advice would you give to a young architect?
To imagine. Coming back to understand the power of imagination and not give that power away. Because again, it's like nobody told us how much we can imagine. We put a cap on that limit.
Yeah.
So if as a student and if as a human being, you're already capping your imagination to this much, you'll probably produce that much. If you start expanding that, you'll probably have more imagination to produce more information. So I would say we're in a moment in time where before, as an architect, if you had an opinion, maybe nobody would hear you because you would have to write a book, or you have. Now they can tweet something, or they can do something. You have more channels to communicate something that starts building a conversation about building thoughts and building architecture. So more than ever, they can be heard. So using their voice, using their power to imagine, just go and present some ideas, no? And then understand that building is not only with bricks, no? You build with thoughts, and you build with seeing the world in a different way, where you know it can be moved in certain directions.
Thank you, Michel.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for
No, no.
doing that. Thank you.